there are going to be a lot of times
never
where
going to see a double
you have
team
to
here.
pick your poison with this line, especially if you have Jordan Davis out there who is a walking double team, right? Like you have to double that guy just because he's so big.
Streaming on in here on Birds 365 with McMullen and McDonald. We got our buddy Dave Zangaro jumping in with us. He too knows how to cover that chin up, and he does so with darker hair than either McMullen or I. So we're jealous on that front. Dave Z, how was your down week?
It was good. I escaped for a few days. I was in West Virginia doing some hiking, and
there we go.
Dave's
the world. We had World Traveler Day. Dave's a big traveler as well. We had Martin Frank on in hour one. Dave, he went to Sweden.
He beats me.
Yeah, that's a little bit farther than West Virginia.
Did you see any Swedes on the trail in West Virginia?
Maybe. I don't know. I didn't get everyone's life story, but it didn't
get the Sweden talk. Happy Robert Quinn Day, Dave. Your first thoughts on the big trade, the big splash, bringing in 18.5 sack Robert Quinn last year. Not this year, which is one, but your thoughts on the trade?
It makes sense. Defensive end is a position that, like, even going back to the draft, I thought they might address really early, and they didn't. I know they got Hassan Reddick as an edge player, and that kind of fit the bill. But then when they lost Derek Barnett, they were trying to kind of piece it together with Patrick Johnson, who I think has actually played fairly well.
Yeah, so
and Teron Jackson, who, I mean, wasn't playing great. No. And really, this is like, you're going to replace those two guys with Robert Quinn, which is an upgrade, you know? And they didn't give up a whole lot to get him. I mean, they gave up a 4th-round pick to get Robert Quinn. They gave up a 4th-round pick a couple years ago to get Jannard Avery.
Yeah,
I know the situations are different, and they were looking at Avery like, all right, this is a trade for 2.5 years of a player, whereas this could be a trade for 10 games, 11 games maybe. So I get the difference, but Quinn's a good player, and there's no, like, you look at risk reward for a trade like this, not a ton of risk, and the reward could be huge.
His numbers this year have fallen off a cliff from where they were last year. One of the best sack guys, 18.5 in the NFL this year. He's got 1 sack in 7 games. We've heard explain the reasoning behind it. How much just joining the Eagles, a team that's 6-0, as compared to the Bears, who got a nice win on Monday night, but prior to that, didn't look like they were going to be anywhere near the playoffs. How much is just the mindset, revitalization of a guy like Quinn, do you think, lift his game coming here to the Eagles?
Look, I don't see him as a guy who was like lacking motivation at all. I look at, I went back and watched him a little bit last night. He's playing a lot. He's getting doubled a lot. Even when he's not getting doubled, it's there's a tight end on that side. There's a running back giving him some extra love. Like he was the guy on that line they were trying to stop. So I think the biggest thing for him coming to this defense is twofold, really. The first and the easiest thing is he's not going to need to play as much. He was playing almost 70% of their snaps. There's not going to be that much to go around here. He's got to get over that mental hurdle. He's not the guy anymore. But the good part about that is he can go harder for every snap. And if you're looking at that line, there are going to be times where he gets some attention, but there are going to be a lot of times
where you're going to see a double team here.
Pick your poison with this line, especially if you have Jordan Davis out there who is a walking double team, right? Like you have to double that guy just because he's so big. I think it's going to free him up. And, I went back and watched Quinn last night a little bit. He's still playing pretty well. He still has the bend around the edge. He still has the get off. And what I like about him too is even though he was playing a lot of snaps, he fits that rally to the ball mentality this defense really likes and this coaching staff likes. I mean, he's making plays sometimes 8 yards down the field, which isn't always what you think about when you're thinking, all right, this guy has 18 sacks. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, but no, he gets back, he hustles. And I know this coaching staff really values that stuff. So I think he's going to be a good addition.
He was also the guy that put Andre Dillard on skates as a rookie. He and Everson Griffin both, where we said, wow, what's going on with Andre? But he's really crafty. I think he's, as you mentioned, Dave, he's rarely going to see a double team. He got constantly double teamed in Chicago. And then he's going back to the scheme he's familiar with and was successful with. I think that's part of it as well. That's all good. My one concern is, and you mentioned the value. I mean, Howie didn't give up anything from the Eagles' perspective. The Bears are paying him basically to play for the Eagles. So you give up a 4th-round pick as a Super Bowl contender. Have no issue with that. Here's my issue. Josh Sweat's playing really well. I don't think people realize that. Enough people. Brandon Graham is playing better than really well. Granted, on a pitch count, but and that's very smart of the Eagles. In theory, I don't know, Robert Quinn coming here to play 15 reps. I think you want him on the field more than that. And who are you taking reps away from?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think the BG pitch count is going to continue. I think he's playing at such a high level at the snaps he's getting that I wouldn't change that. So I don't think you're going to have to worry about like him eating into it more. You're going to have Reddick and you're going to have Sweat as your top 2 guys still. I think Quinn probably slides in there with BG as the next option. It's going to really push down snaps for Patrick Johnson, who, like I mentioned, I thought was playing well. And that's the downside for him, is that now there's a guy with a ton of experience in here. And I am curious to see if they start changing some things schematically. We've seen Kaiser White get some snaps as an edge rusher, which I get why they're doing that. They're showing one front and playing another. But so there are some other edge snaps that haven't gone to the edge guys all the time. There are those snaps. And then we haven't seen it. We saw it a ton under Jim Schwartz. We haven't seen Gannon do it. But there are times where, BG can play inside.
Oh, yeah.
And we haven't really seen him do a ton of that, especially this year. So
can Reddick a little bit.
They use him like that in training camp at times. So I'm curious if in passing situations, now that they have a surplus of edge players, if we'll see that old NASCAR package come out and maybe get an extra defensive end on the field to really get after passers.
Here's the only thing that, and this is a potentially bothers me situation, might not even be out there. This is kind of a theoretical question. If you've got a 4th-round pick to move, and the Eagles have signified they were willing to give up their 4th-round pick, which starts to kind of trim the herd on their draft picks for next year. But we'll put that aside. They've made the decision that a 4th-round pick is something that they're willing to invest to give themselves a better chance to win the Super Bowl this year. What position do you think is more important? A defensive lineman who's going to go into the rotation and play X amount of snaps, or a backup safety if Marcus Epps or CJ Gardner go down this week, a guy who's better than Kayvon Wallace, maybe even a backup cornerback, because Bradford and Slay have been phenomenal, but if one of them goes down, it's going to miss a month or 6 weeks. You're plugging in Zach McPherson going forward next week, which was a bigger need. And I know it's very easy to say, oh, Quinn's definitely going to play because that's a rotational position. I get that. But do you more need that, or could you use a better safety net at a couple of D-back positions on this team right now?
I'll go through that piece by piece. First, I mean, they still have 6 picks next year and 2 first-round picks. So it's not like they're depleted at all from a draft pick perspective.
If John keeps telling me a 4th-round pick is nothing, what the hell are 2
for a Super Bowl contender? You forget that. The Eagles, it's nothing for, like, I don't give, this is what I said, Dave. I don't give a crap about a 4th-round pick for the Eagles in 2023 because they have a legitimate championship window. So if they
push it in.
For
it. Yeah. And I mean, they're not completely depleted. That was my point. As far as which is more important, I don't know if one's more important than the other, but you have to remember it's not fantasy. You have to trade with what the rest of the league has
right.
available.
If the trade's not out there, that's why I asked it as a theoretical question.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a safety who's available for a 4th-round pick. I don't know that there's a corner who's available for a 4th-round pick.
It's just tough. I'd honestly, I'd lean edge rusher is more important because of what you said. That we know they're going to play, and that's not to say an insurance policy isn't a bad idea at the safety position, but you could be in a position where you trade away a 4th-round pick for a guy who's not going to play.
Yeah, that part. But here's what tilted it for me was I thought coming into sort of trade deadline season was those 16 snaps against Dallas where we saw Kayvon Wallace out there for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I said, I'd go get a safety if I could, if that was available, more than defensive end, because Reddick's playing at a high level. Call him what you want. Sam linebacker. He's an edge rusher to me. Josh is playing at a high level. Brandon's playing at a high level. That's pretty good. I mean, yeah, you'd like to have the 4th guy, and we know the Eagles like to rotate. But man, that drop off. And by the way, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's making plays, splash, but he's not playing that well overall from a consistent snap-to-snap level. And then you saw the drop-off from that to Kayvon Wallace. That concerned me a little bit, Dave.
Yeah, I get it. I will say I think Gardner-Johnson's playing better week over week.
Oh, yeah.
Which is to be expected. I'm not worried about him. You're right. I mean, the safety depth is a concern. I wonder if they get into a situation. Kayvon is clearly the next guy, but if they were going for a long period of time without one of their starters, I wonder if they wouldn't try Josiah Scott back there or even Reed Blankenship. The options aren't great. I'll give you that. But I still think you're getting a player in Robert Quinn who we know is going to make an impact. And I totally understand the insurance policy, but I don't mind the idea of, go get an edge rusher who we know is going to potentially make a big difference no matter what else happens.
We know that Lane Johnson was at practice yesterday, didn't participate, but Lane himself said he expects to play this Sunday, although the coach specifically said he's still in concussion protocol. So there were kind of two divergent ways to look at Lane's participation on Sunday. The Eagles, to their credit, have had an injury-less season, not completely, but compared to other teams in the National Football League, their whole less is more theory has worked for practice to keep their players healthy for Sunday afternoons. How do they handle Lane Johnson this week? If he's kind of on the fence, and when you have the coach saying one thing and a player saying the other on a Wednesday before the Sunday game, that to me kind of is sitting on the fence. How are they going to decide whether Lane Johnson should or shouldn't play?
No, there's no sitting on the fence. If he's cleared, he plays. If he's not cleared, he doesn't play. And I think he's going to be cleared, and I think he's going to play. If that's the nice thing about the concussion protocol. And not to say that there aren't faults with the way the league handles concussions, but
look at Miami.
Certainly. I mean, and it's become a big emphasis this year, but the in-week concussion protocol is spelled out pretty clearly. You have to pass all these steps, the final one being the independent neurologist. And as long as he passes those steps, and look, sometimes you have to rely on players to be honest, and they're not always honest about what they're feeling, but you can only control that to a certain extent. As long as he's cleared, he's going to play. And I expect him to play.
Yeah. And the fact that he was out there on a Wednesday limited, that indicates he's in the fourth phase, which is basically no symptoms, independent neurologist. So, yeah.
When we were watching him, he wasn't taking reps in offensive line drills.
Mental. Yeah.
Yeah, he was mental, and he was mirroring them behind him. But he's preparing like he's going to play.
And so was Brett Toth, by the way. And I bring up Brett to bring up Tyree Jackson, which was a little bit interesting to me, Dave, that they started the 21-day window, because that means, to me at least, maybe you have a different take, that they want him back. And I'm a little surprised by that. because you're not going to carry 4 tight ends, I wouldn't think. They like Grant Calcaterra. Maybe he's not ready to play a whole heck of a lot of snaps. Jack Stoll is been effective in 12 personnel, never going to be an explosive guy. What do you make of starting the window? Because they're not starting. Toth is ready, but they're not starting the window because they have no room for him. They started the window on Jackson. That tells me something.
Yeah, I was a little surprised too. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, Jack Stoll isn't losing his job. Tight end is another position where you can make a case. Maybe you look around the league and try to shake something free. But I think Stoll is effective in what they ask him to do. So it'll be Calcaterra if they think down the stretch Tyree gives them more as a third tight end, and maybe he does. I don't know. It's not like he has more experience, really. He hasn't played in the league. Maybe he offers you a little more in special teams.
I guess they could just go through the window and put him back on injured reserve,
which is possible. Maybe they just want to get him out there for practice for a few weeks and let him get that under his belt and then sit him down.
Yeah.
All right, so let me ask both of you Eagle Beat guys this question. Jackson looks good. They decide they want to put him on the active roster. They need to make a move with Calcaterra. They're not carrying 4 tight ends on any given week. There's not going to be a 4 tight end roster. So somebody's got to go. Would Calcaterra get claimed if the Eagles put him through waivers?
Possible, but I mean, he hasn't done anything really to warrant getting.
He had the 40-yard reception on his first reception. That's pretty good.
That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he can get a hamstring injury again.
Yeah, maybe Janarius Robinson sprained ankle pops up magically. Which, that by the way is interesting when we talk about the backup offensive lineman, because the trade deadline is November 1st. I think everyone says, all right, Howie did his thing. He's still got time. There's still, he doesn't have those mid-range draft picks. So he's not going to move a draft pick. Could he move Andre Dillard, player for player trade? We talk about.
Or he could take the additional step, get a pick, flip the pick.
That's true. You can go a bunch of different ways. That would be very Howie-like to get a pick and then flip that pick for something else. He loves to do things. Do you expect any more movement before the trade deadline?
I think it's possible, but you brought up a good point that at least next year they don't have that mid-round pick left to trade. Can you get something for a 7th? Yeah, maybe, if a team's just looking to unload somebody. The Dillard thing is interesting because they're a better football team with Andre Dillard, right? But a team offers you a 3rd-round pick, you have a pretty tough decision to make. And I don't know which way they would lean. You get back to Toth, not that Toth is going to replace Andre Dillard, but if you feel good about your O-line depth without Dillard enough to trade him for, I think it would have to be a 3rd-round pick. I don't think you would do it for a 4.
Yeah. But did Jack Driscoll's ability to hold up at left tackle change your thought process and say, well, we now know Jack can do it, at least at a competent level. Maybe we don't need Andre as much as we thought we did.
A little, but I still think there's a decent-sized drop-off from Andre to Jack Driscoll. So, I wasn't shocked that Driscoll held up at left tackle. I thought he did an okay job. But look, if he's going to have to play multiple games for this team, I think the offense would have to change depending on their opponent with him at left tackle. Whereas I don't think it would with Andre Dillard, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Dave, let me give you a couple of facts on the Steelers' offense. They've only surpassed 20 points once in their first 7 games, and they needed overtime to do that to beat the Bengals 23-20. They have 0 plays of 20 yards or more rushing. None. They're the only team in the NFL that doesn't have
shocks me.
a run over 20 yards. Najee Harris has not broken one all year long, and they've got one pass play of over 40 yards. So they're not a chunk play team at all. They're not a high-scoring team at all. Should the Eagles' defense just eat continuously on Sunday?
The Steelers want to be a chunk play team. They're trying. They're trying their little hearts out.
Yeah.
I'll give you a fun fact about Kenny Pickett, who I think has kind of been thrown to the wolves here a little bit with the first few opponents he's faced. But he's the first quarterback through his first 4 career games with 2 or fewer touchdowns and 7 or more picks. He's Ryan Leaf.
Ooh, bad company to be keeping.
Ryan Leaf, yeah.
That brings up bad memories for me. I thought Ryan Leaf could play. I admit it. I was the one.
The offense, they have some good receivers. Pickens looks like a lot of fun. Deontay Johnson's pretty good. Chase Claypool, no Nate Gary in this game, so I don't know if he's going to have 3 touchdowns.
Or Nate Gary. That was the worst coverage scheme in history. What is Nate Gary doing on Chase Claypool? That's Jim Schwartz.
It wasn't Nate's fault, but you can't have Nate Gary on Chase Claypool. But look, they have some decent weapons, so you have to at least respect that. I don't have a ton of faith in the quarterback getting him the football. I don't have a ton of faith in that offensive line giving the quarterback enough time to get rid of the football. The running back situation is interesting. You're right. He hasn't been very good, but he is a good player.
Yeah.
And this team, if you look at areas where the Eagles have struggled a little bit, run defense is one of them. So, maybe if I'm watching the Eagles on tape and I see, hey, that 4-man front's out there and Jordan Davis is off the field, probably try to run on them. And I just expect we see Pittsburgh do that a little bit. That's
a good point, Dave. And last one from me, I'll end it with that. At D Zangaro, NBCS, NBCsports.com/Philadelphia. You can read Dave there. Tackling, run support. Now, it hasn't mattered, but that's been pretty poor for the Eagles. That would be the one thing on the defense where I'd say offense, people look at second half scoring. Special teams, we know the problem there. When they're doing their self-scout, they got to realize they're not a good tackling team. I don't know if it's all about undersized players, but there's a lot of undersized players on this team, and they just added another one. If it comes up in January football, it might even come up with Tennessee and Derrick Henry. Can they just flip the switch and say, oh, we're going to stop the run today? Is it all on Jordan Davis?
It feels like a lot of it's on Jordan Davis. I think they have some players who, like Fletcher Cox can be a good run defender, but he's played for so many years with his ears pinned back going after the passer that I think it's kind of tough for him all of a sudden to be a run stuffer. So I think there are like little things schematically they can do to help them become a better tackling team and be in the right positions at least. But mostly it's like a lot of execution errors. And you're right. Sometimes it's undersized players. I think some of that will take care of itself when you look at, we mentioned CJ Gardner-Johnson earlier. He's missed some tackles, and I think a lot of his missed tackles have been bad angles. And I think that's going to happen when you have a player playing at more depth than he's used to. So I think that'll just kind of self-correct a little bit. But yeah, it's an issue. It's something they have to try to figure out. And sometimes it's just execution, like there are some schematic things, but a lot of their tackling problems are just, you got to get a guy to the ground.
All right. Last one for me, Dave. John and I were kicking this around earlier and noting that the Indianapolis Colts have a pretty big game this week. Their season could be hanging in the balance, and Sam Ehlinger is going to the hill for
heavyweight battle with Taylor Heineke this week.
That might be a fun game to watch, honestly.
I know.
Right, because we're all worried about Carson Wentz not being able to come back and play against Eagles. Well, he's supposed to play against the Colts this week, but he can't play in that game either because he's hurt. But I digress. They were in pretty damn good shape just a year and change ago, coming off of Phillip Rivers' 11-win team. They had the playoffs there for their taking, couldn't win either of their last 2 games. Now they're 3-1. They've already pulled the plug on Matt Ryan after only 7 games. Is the reason that the Colts are right now a red-hot mess Frank Reich, their wacky owner, the fact that they've never recovered from Andrew Luck retiring unexpectedly when they did, or the fact that Nick Sirianni is here in Philadelphia rather than in Indianapolis?
I like Nick. I don't think that's the reason.
Oh, you question the coach. I'm setting him up for the big. Of course, it's Nick Sirianni. You give him no props.
Yeah, look, he's a good coach, but I think Frank is still running that ship. To me, it's Chris Ballard, and he's a guy who has a lot of respect around the league.
Good reputation,
good reputation, straight shooter, all this.
Yeah,
the team he's been putting out there. I mean, I feel like in 10 years they're still going to be like, yeah, but Andrew Luck retired on us right before the season. Figure it out. Figure it out. Like, you're going to do this every year with draft a quarterback. Try it. You know,
they got to bite the bullet. They got to develop a quarterback. I mean, Rivers was great.
Or sell your soul and go try to trade for one.
Yeah. Well, they tried that.
Well, yeah, that's not Carson Wentz. You know,
or Matt Ryan.
you need a quarterback. It can't be this year-over-year thing.
Yeah.
And I guess they thought they had that in Carson, but you're staking your reputation to a guy that – and some of that's Frank, right? Because he vouched for him and it didn't work out. I'd put it on Chris Ballard, a lot of it, honestly.
Yeah.
And the other thing they haven't been able to do is develop a wide receiver either. And you don't know, it's that chicken or egg thing. What comes first, the quarterback – the wide receivers or wide receivers are affecting the quarterback.
Okay.
Who's been the wide receiver they've had in the last couple of years that scared you?
I think Pittman would be good if they had a.
I mean, honestly, one of their biggest draft misses was Paris Campbell.
Yeah. Yeah, that was JJ's year. They both it was JJ or Paris Campbell. The Eagles would have missed
their
either
careers
way.
would have been much different if
they missed either way. Whichever player they were going to take.
Wasn't they strong wide receiver, 2nd round draft class? We'll agree on that. Daisy, always good to get you on. Thanks for doing it today. Hope you enjoyed yourself out there in the wilds of West Virginia. You missed the Swedes though, but we appreciate you hopping in with these couple of Irishmen here today. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, Dave.